All right, so today we're going to go through Unit 32, which is Strategic Human Resource Management. If you guys have any doubts, you can stop me and I can take that up for you. We're going to go through this presentation, and I'm also going to show you the learning outcomes for this specific unit. So we have the learning outcomes opened over here. I had opened it beforehand. We're going to go through LO1 today and assess how the HR strategy and practices are influenced by developments in an organization's external and contextual environment. So let's go through the unit aim as well really quickly. So firstly, talking about what is human resource management and why is it so important? So it helps in delivering all of the key and important, organization's performance, and is a driver of sustainable competitive advantage. So if you're talking about strategic human resource management, and it can also be called people strategy, by the way, it helps to create a framework essentially for employees wherein you can go on with hiring, how they can be managed, how they have to be developed, and eventually how that specific employee can help to support the organization through all the long-term goals. So if I just roughly talk about what human resources is, so I would say that it's like a pinwheel. So around human resources, there are so many functions going. We have management of people in the organization, obviously. We have strategy and planning, and which basically is the decisions that we take, which changes the future and needs to achieve the organizational goals. We also have compliance, which basically means we have to abide by all the rules and all of the local government and authority, basically, while managing people. We have talent management inside human resources, which basically means attracting the right talent and motivating the associates and retaining them to basically perform better. We have training and development, which basically is self-explanatory, training associates for the betterment, not just their training, but also eventually them helping the organization as a whole. And we have performance management over there and total rewards. And lastly, safety and health. So these are the important aspects of human resource in general. For this specific unit, we're going to talk about how strategic human resource management helps in the development and achievement of sustainable organizational strategies. There are different HR models, theories, concepts that we're going to go through this entire unit. By the end of this unit, students will basically have the confidence to contribute to the strategic decision-making in an HR context. And this unit basically gives proper evidence-based and gives outcome-driven perspective that supports all of the knowledge that we're going to go through in this specific function. Going through LO1, basically, strategic HRM and external environment. So how HRM is distinctive philosophy relating to the way people should be managed in the workplace. All right, I'll just give a very basic example of, say, a business, which is a cafe. So a cafe is selling coffee and hot chocolate, okay? And the main things that they're selling are going to be in demand, especially these few months. It's Christmas, it's December, it's cold. Everyone's going to need coffee. Everyone's going to need hot chocolate, right? So as the HR of that cafe, we come up with, say, a plan or a strategy. So what kind of HR strategy would you want to put in? If I give an example, we be deciding that, all right, let's put a compensation plan in this specific cafe or in this specific business unit, wherein all of the associates, if they were being paid, say, £9 per hour, we're going to increase their costs and just pay them £10 per hour. As an associate, you're going to be really happy and you're going to be like, all right, I've been valued. The business cares about me. I'm getting fair compensation, or I'm getting more for what I was working for. But essentially, the HR strategy or the plan in the back end is going to be, all right, it's November, December. The sales are going to go high. There's going to be more workload. How can we retain associates? Because obviously, if the workload goes up and there's going to be more stress, people are going to be like, all right, I don't think I'm getting paid enough for the amount of work I'm doing. That's why you come up with compensation plans beforehand. That's why HR is really important, because you need to think of everything, what's going to happen in the future, and put plans in place. Because obviously you're going to, in October, you're going to let them know that, all right, you're going to get you're going to get paid more for the same amount of work that you're doing. But they don't know that the workload's going to increase in the end, right? So that's a basic example of how HR strategy should be put in place and how it helps in the future. And when we're talking about all the external environment that's going to be influenced, is basically the sales going up. That's the external environment that's going to be influencing the HR strategy. We're going to talk about contingency theory. Does anyone know what contingency theory is?
Yeah, basically a contingency plan is for an unforeseen event or a
Definitely.
partial unforeseen event.
Yes, definitely. Yes, that you're absolutely correct. It basically means that you have to come up with a plan. It can be on the spot. It can be thinking about it in the future, basically keeping a safety in hand. You go roller skating, right? You go roller skating. If you go without wearing any safety equipment, you might fall, you might not fall, but it's always advisable to have a safety equipment around, right? So contingency plan or theory essentially means that as a leader or as an HR person, how well you adapt to a specific situation when it comes in. So it can be any situation, it depends. It can be a small thing that's going on wherein one associate has an issue with another associate, or it can be a major issue wherein someone in the company is suing the company because the dressing policy or the dress code policy is not something they agree with. So it can vary a lot. We're going to talk about how organizations and the HR functions needing to respond and adapt to changes in the external environment when developing strategy. Coming back to my example on the cafe. So how can we put in things in place before the external environment affects them? And that is what developing strategy basically means, coming up with specific strategies in place from beforehand. I don't know if you guys know, but right now, paternity leaves are getting really famous, not just maternity leaves, but paternity leaves as well. So all the organizations around are coming up with a new policy, basically a paternity policy, which essentially means that fathers can take leave for about 2 weeks while they're having a new child or a new kid. And that is how we are adapting to the external environment, because the world is changing. Everyone feels like, all right, if a mother gets some time off to take care of her child and spend time with her child, the father should equally get that much time as well. It's not just the mother having the kid, right? So this is one of an example wherein how you're coming up with a developing strategy. And the need to ensure the alignment of HR practices with business strategy if HR is to make a strategic contribution. We're also going to be talking about some contemporary trends and developments in HR. So there are so many different trends that have been started. We have workforce diversity. We have changes in the working patterns. People like a flexible shift nowadays. It's not just 9 to 5 that people are sticking on. They're realizing that you can have a flexible shift. You can work for a few hours, go out, go to the gym, do your work, come back, work again, and that's going to work. Remote working has become such a big thing. I feel nowadays, when you're even putting job adverts outside and people read that, okay, you need to go into the office all 5 days a week, they're kind of put off and they're like, no, like if I can do the same job from my house, from the comfort of my home, why do I have to go and travel in traffic, go and reach the work, like wear formal clothes? I don't need to do that, right? So there are so many trends that are coming up. There's AI in HR that's come up as well. So how artificial intelligence is being used for specific HR practices, which is really, I felt that was really interesting. So you have obviously generic HR strategies, wherein you're viewing a person that's working in your organization as a cost or an asset. So obviously, if the person is contributing more than what they're being paid, that's an asset for you. And if they're not, that's obviously going to be a big cost for you, right? There are so many changes in the HR policy and practices because we are sticking to current trends and developments. For example, that I gave of the paternity policy that's coming up. And obviously digital technologies that have come up and people management practices. You have so many different practices. First, recruitment was what? Just putting an ad in a newspaper and trying to find the right candidate. Now recruitment is gotten such a big thing. You need to actually sell your organization for people to be interested to apply for that specific job role. You need to give good benefits, good leaves. They like I think I read somewhere there was a job advert and they said that two 2 weeks of paid leave for going to vacation to Ibiza. Like, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. I have never come up with such an idea. So there are so many new policies that have come up in HR itself. And obviously HR issues. There are so many issues that are going around. It can be small firms, large firms, private, public, third sector. We're going to be talking about all of that. Okay. I'm going to explain you what HR is. So I spoke about the different aspects of HR and it has so many different areas to it. So think of it in your heads as a big chart wherein HR is in the center and there are arrows going around in all directions, talking about the different issues. You can have issues related to employees, you have hiring, administration, training. I feel employee training in a specific organization is so important because if you put someone in a specific place and tell them to do the same thing every day without any changes to their work, I feel after a point that specific associate's going to be bored with their job that they're doing. So we need to make sure as HR in the company that how we can keep them engaged and how we can retain our associates. So you keep giving them different kinds of roles that you need to put in. That's why there's a lot of internal changes that happens in the organization. There are people being always rotated and moved. There are people being moved up, down, everywhere around. Because if you put a specific person for a long time in a specific role, that person is going to eventually be like, all right, it's time to move on. I need to grow. So that's where training and development is really important. You can train your associates for a specific job role and then push them up and promote them to do better in that specific organization. I have a quick video that I want to show you guys wherein it explains what HR was before and what HR is now. Let me just put that up now. Was it this one? Nope. Right here.
The role of your HR team was largely functional, centered around payroll, leave, policy making, and training. Recruitment generally meant putting an ad in the paper and hoping for the best, or hiring a recruiter. Then things changed. Technology and social media happened, and as a result, your role as the head of HR began to evolve. Being just a brand name company was no longer enough. Because of social media, everyone knows what it's like to work in your company. What your company culture is like, even if your office has a slide. The employer brand was born. Now every employee is an ambassador. Their experiences are shared with a captive online audience, who in turn share it with their audiences. Today, the first step of recruitment doesn't start with a job application. It starts online. The very first thing a prospective job candidate does is run a search on you, not just your company. It's also your LinkedIn profile that they are looking at. As the head of HR, you now also need to be a brand builder and a marketer. Recruitment began to change too. Technology opened up a whole new world of talent. Not just active job seekers, but hundreds upon thousands of qualified candidates who weren't actively looking. It was a game changer. You now had direct access to talent. You no longer had to wait for the right CV to cross your desk. Your employees were also increasingly becoming a valuable source of recruitment. As ambassadors for your company, they were best placed to identify the right people to join your team. For them to do that efficiently, you needed to give them the right tools: a strong employer brand, a great company narrative, and an inspiring work environment. As the head of HR, you now also need to be a communications expert and motivator. Technology also opened up an overwhelming world of data to HR leaders. There was so much opportunity to utilize this data to improve the decision-making process, make better hires, and retain talent, all at your fingertips. You just had to make sense of it all, because you now needed to be an analyst and an insights person. Today, the role of HR in an organization is no longer functional. It's transformational. As a head of HR, you are responsible for building your employer brand so that you attract the right talent. You deliver value for your company by understanding and using data-driven insights to improve efficiencies. You hire the right talent by connecting with the right people. You are a brand builder, an analyst, a communicator, a motivator, and a collaborator. As your partners at LinkedIn, we are here to provide you with just the tools and insights you need to get the job done.
I hope you understand what that video basically meant, that so much has been changed since these past few years. I feel specifically in these past couple of years and after lockdown, that it's not just about, okay, this is what we do, this is what you'd have to do, come in and apply to the job. I think it's more about selling your company and selling your brand to people. And that is what HR essentially means. Talking about HR data and looking through all of the insights, I feel HR analysts specialize in doing that. It essentially looks at data, not just what people have to do, but also where people would get eventually if they do that specific job role. And there are, for recruitment specifically, there are being softwares that are being used to sort CVs out. So if you don't have specific keywords in your CV, for example, you wouldn't even be shown up to the HR person, because that's the device or that's the AI that they're using for sorting CVs out right now. So there's a lot that been changed. And there are different theoretical frameworks as well that help specific HR practices. You have the human capital theory. Does anyone know what the human capital theory is? So it essentially means that associates are valuable assets. So you have an associate who's experienced, has so much, educational certificates because he's specifically studied that job role, and how that person or that asset helps in contributing to the organization. So they're basically human capital theory. They call people as human capital because they are investments for your company as well. Then you have another key theory, which is the resource-based view. We're going to come back to it down as well. It essentially means that human resources are, again, strategic assets. And if they can if they're managed effectively, they can obviously provide really proper competitive advantage to the company. So talking about the different theoretical frameworks in strategic human resource management, we just spoke about resource-based view, basically. It essentially means that a specific person is considered to be very valuable or rare, and it is an asset for you. It's there for a specific reason. So it's giving proper benefits outside. Then you have the strategic fit, wherein it talks about if the person you're hiring or the specific person is a proper and ideal fit to your organization. And you have the best fit approach. So best fit approach means that this is a specific policy. This is going to be throughout the organization and you're not going to make changes to it. So it means one thing should be okay for the entire organization, or one size fits all solution. Exactly this. So you are coming up with a specific solution, and this is going to go around throughout the organization as one thing. You're not going to make changes to it again and again, and not going to adapt it for specific people. You have the best practice approach, wherein you come up with suitable practices that are going to be applicable to your business model or your business unit in advance, and how you're going to put that in place, thinking about it in the future. So you're going to put that specifically in place in advance. So what is strategic human resource management essentially? It basically means that you're creating a framework for your employees and you're creating a proper systematic routine, basically how people are hired, how they are managed, how they are developed, and how they can eventually support the organization and its long-term goals. So you're looking at your entire workforce and coming up with specific policies and practices that are obviously aligned to your specific organization. And I feel this approach goes beyond traditional HR functions because you need to think about different plans in place from beforehand. So apart from recruitment, payroll, and employee relations, you're coming up with way more when it comes to strategic human resource management. Now, there are few practices that are always in the organization that's going to be there, apart from plans that you need to come up with. You have recruitment and selection, you have training and development, you have performance management, compensation and benefits, employee relations, and compliance. So basically, HR is so crucial for not just putting all of these plans in place, but also specific things that would affect the organization as a whole. And the organization comes up with so many different challenges. You have diversity and inclusion, because, for example, you're hiring a specific person. You're not just looking at, okay, you're doing good at your job. You're also looking at, when you come into the organization, how are you going to fit in with that mix? Because you already have associates in the organization. If you put someone that might not fit in that specific mix, eventually that person is not going to work out in the organization. Then there are different technological changes that come up where it comes to working practices. And obviously, work-life balance is a very crucial part of HR as well. So essentially, HR plays so many crucial roles in strategic management of an organization's workforce and eventually contributing to the overall organization's effectiveness and success. Now you have specific key aspects of strategic human resource management. Firstly, when you're thinking about a specific plan or a strategy, let's go back to my example of the cafe and how it's selling coffee and hot chocolate. Now you thought about the strategy or the plan that you want to put in place, which was compensation plan. You're thinking of this way in advance because you know that the workload is going to increase in the future. So if you're thinking of a specific plan, it should align with the organization's goals. So why am I putting this plan in place? So that eventually it's going to help the organization, because there's going to be a lot of workload and associates are going to be struggling to finish that workload. So to give them some incentive, we are giving a compensation plan in place from beforehand. That is how you align your specific plan or strategy to the organization's goals. Coming to workforce planning and talent management. Workforce planning is a very important aspect because you're not just managing your people and how they are working. We are also seeing that, okay, this specific person has the right skills and you're putting that person in this specific job role. But when the person starts working, you also need to see that, okay, you have some more skills that you can improve on. How can I help you develop that skill? And how can I eventually get more out of your job role from you? And obviously there's talent management, wherein you're taking care of the right talent by putting the right person in the right place in the right time. You have performance management, wherein you need to check how associates or employees are performing in a specific job role. And you need to keep encouraging them with better performance and how to help them to get continuous improvement within themselves. So it's not just about putting someone in a specific place and be like, do the job. You need to keep motivating them to do better. You need to keep giving them good words, wherein telling them, all right, this is something that you did really well, giving them little incentives as well. I had an organization that I worked for wherein they used to give these small points if you're doing a good job. So if you did a really good job, you used to get these, it used to be called living proof points, essentially. They used to give you these points, and at the end, you could buy things from these points, and they had a catalog of things available over there. You could buy any voucher, Amazon, any little voucher available in the world, you can buy it over there. They had items over there. They had literally Apple watches, you have jewelry, you have everything available over there. So I felt that was really encouraging for me, because it helped me to do better, because I was looking at getting extra points apart from my salary. This is something extra that I'm getting, which motivated me. Then you have leadership development, wherein you need to check how leaders are working along with their associates in a specific place. So if you're putting a specific leader in the job role or in the top of the hierarchy, you need to check how they are working properly with the associates in that hierarchy under them. And if the leader also has proper contingency theories in place, because I feel for leaders specifically, having a proper contingency plan or theory is so important. And it's not just about having a plan in advance, it's also having how the leader adapts themselves and manages in a specific situation. So that's where leadership development comes in place, where you need to keep developing them and explaining them how they could handle that specific situation better. You have organizational culture, wherein it's basically how a specific organization works. You can have an organization which has a laid back culture, an organization which has a very formal and a very strict dress code policy as well. That's how organization culture varies. You have change management, wherein it basically explains how managing or changing specific processes. It can be an internal process, it can be an external process. How is that going to help later on? And how can that manage productivity within the organization as well? And lastly, you have HR analytics. HR analytics basically also talks about AI in HR, wherein how you can use data-driven strategies to get the best out of your associates and also best out of putting the right candidate in the right place. So there's a quick video about talking about what is strategic human resource management. Just going to take you there now.
Let's take a look at strategic human resource management. Every company's human resource management policies and activities should make sense in terms of the firm's strategic aim. Strategic human resource management means formulating practices so the company needs to achieve its strategic aims. The basic idea of strategic human resource management is this. In formulating policies, the managers should formulate policies that produce the employee's skills and behaviors that the company needs to achieve its strategic goals. The HR strategy is dynamic, not static. In other words, the manager should determine where each HR activity, like recruiting and so on, is now and where it should be in order to support the employer's strategic aim. The key to success is to think through how the manager is going to transform the various HR activities so that they align with and support the company's strategic priorities. In developing strategic plans, first, the manager formulates the strategic plan with goals. Next, they ask, what employee skills and behaviors will we need to achieve these plans and goals? And finally, specifically, what recruitment, selection, training, and other HR policies and practices should we put into place so as to produce the required employee skills and behaviors? Managers often refer to their specific HR policies and practices as human resource strategies.
I think that just gave you an idea on what strategic human resource management is and how the entire process works from the back end perspective as well. So again, coming back to discussing how an organization's HR strategy and practice is influenced by external developments. So there are so many developments that are taking place throughout, and there are so many different factors that impact an organization's HR strategies and the practices. So you have technological advancements. The video that I showed you before basically explained how new technology is influencing human resources so much, because you have AI and automation coming in, wherein there are so many new technologies that have come up. it's not only focusing on upskilling employees, but also giving them new skills and giving them extra power to basically perform better in that specific job role. Nowadays, employees have so many resources that can actually help them do better. And AI is also very important when it comes to, as I spoke about it before, sorting your CVs out and helping in recruitment. It makes the process so much quicker because you don't have to sort through everything individually. There is AI in place. You just put 2 keywords and everything would come up. Obviously, there is disadvantages to it as well, because if that specific associate might be the best fit for that job role, but their CVs don't have those keywords, they wouldn't even show up on the Boolean search. A Boolean search basically is the search engine that you use to find and search CVs. Then we spoke about the remote working, wherein remote working has gotten so high that people, if they don't have a proper ratio to going in the office and remotely working at home, they probably would not be there in that specific job role for a long time, because everyone nowadays has gotten really practical and they feel like, why am I traveling to work? Why am I paying more for petrol or for my travel? Why am I going in this rush and going to do the same job that I can do from the comfort of my house? Then you have many economic conditions that have been influencing HR as well. You have globalization, wherein globalization has affected so many HR strategies. When it comes to diversity, you have talent acquisition, cross-culture training. It's all influenced by globalization that's happening around. And you have economic cycles. So there are like the previous year was us seeing a downfall in the economic cycle. And from next year, basically, there's going to be a boom around in the economy again. So the last year was really stressful when it comes to looking for jobs and applications. There were companies that were doing layoffs. There were companies letting go of their associates because they just couldn't afford them. It wasn't a good economic period, essentially. But when you're coming back to this next year coming up, you're looking at more hiring, more people coming in organizations, you're looking at more job roles available in the market. Then talking about the legal and regulatory changes, there have been really many changes to the employment laws lately, especially here in the UK. And you have changes to your minimum wage that you have to pay. You have changes to the HR policies that are coming up. I spoke about a paternity policy that has come up recently that organizations are implementing now, wherein you need to give leaves to even men in the organization when they're having a new child. Then talking about data protection regulations, GDPR has become so important, especially in the UK and Europe, because people are so worried about their data being sold, and that's actually happening. That's why there are proper laws that have been put up in place now to avoid that happening, essentially. Then you have demographic shifts, wherein you have aging workforce and you have diverse workforce. So we now can see that there is a range in the age groups of people coming in and working. You have someone really at a high level as well and working probably in his 50s and doing really well. And you have someone in their 20s and doing equally well, because of all of the resources that are coming up. There have been so many changes that are happening that we young people can also have the power to make these important decisions and actually do well in our career. And you have diverse workforce, wherein you have people coming in from different cultures and places and working essentially together. You have different social and cultural trends that have come up as well. There have been changes to workforce expectations and corporate social responsibility. So when I'm talking about changes to workforce expectations, you have proper work-life balance expectations. You have expectations from your associates to get this job done in that specific time period itself. And you have to put in time for them to be working flexibly as well. And you need to put in flexible working arrangements in place. Flexible working arrangements essentially include that if I have a specific condition and that condition just not hampers, but causes me some kind of stress while I'm doing my job, that is a flexible working arrangement that me and my organization can come up with. For example, if you have a specific person that's suffering from cancer, they have to go for doctor appointments, tests, and do all of that. So I, as an HR person or as the organization, I'm coming up with a flexible working arrangement wherein I'm like, all right, you have to go for a doctor's appointment twice a week for 2 hours. Absolutely fine. This is where you cover up. Just come in an hour earlier at work and leave an hour later on a day wherein you don't have to go for a doctor's appointment. That is some arrangement that I come up with so that I'm not being discriminatory in terms of, since you have a specific condition, you might not be able to do your job role. No, that's not the case. I think they can do it really well. But we need to come up with proper arrangements for helping them succeed in that specific job role. Then you have CSR that's growing, wherein it eventually means that there are different values that an organization has and how they're putting that into place. So you can have someone passionate about the environment. So CSR helps that passion to be put in place when you're like, all right, let's look at things that we can do to help the environment. Let's look at a cleanup drive that we can set up to help drive your passion. So it's not just about you doing your work and doing your job and working every day. It's also about how can your extra passions be put into place, and that can be put in your job role as well. So eventually, organizations must continuously monitor all of these external developments that are coming up and be very proactive, because being proactive is the key over here, because you have to attract, retain, and develop talent. And that's really important and crucial for an organization's success. And obviously, eventually, there is a rapidly changing environment that's going on externally. So if we don't catch up with the changing environment, you're eventually going to be left behind. And that's not something an organization would want. Now we're going to talk about and evaluate how developments in an organization external and internal environment creates tensions in the effective management of human resources. So obviously there is so much going around, and coming up to one plan or one strategy, and all of the people agreeing with that strategy might not always happen. So there are many factors that are put into place, and there are conflicts that take place. And eventually all of these arguments, conflicts, and ideas come together to help meet the organization's objectives. So you have external developments that are impacting human resources again. We spoke about these. We spoke about technological change that matters a lot. Economic fluctuations. So again, as I spoke, there was a downfall that happened last year. There's going to be an economic boom that's going to come up. That's what's predicted. There are going to be changes in hiring, in laying off. That's always going to be happening. We spoke about the employment law and the changes that have been brought to the regulations. There are demographic shifts that have been taking place as well. You have aging population, and then you have new people coming up. You have the Gen Z that have been coming up, and their working style is completely different to someone who's been working since the past 30 years already. You have social and cultural trends that we again spoke about. Talking about internal developments that impact human resource management. Organization change. I feel organizational change makes such a big, it matters so much in the organization, because you have new managers coming up. You need to check that if that specific manager, that specific person or people leader that has been put in place is going to align with your organization's culture and organization's community in general. Leadership change, basically. You have leaders that are in high positions that have been replaced nowadays because they are not able to catch up with the current trends that are going on in the environment. And these new leaders that have come up with such a fresh boost of ideas that while putting in new strategies into place, it gets really difficult, because not everyone might agree with the new changes that are happening. And also, not everyone is comfortable with new changes. If you've been put in a place wherein you have to do something different from what you're always used to been doing, you are going to be uncomfortable for sure. You have cultural shifts that are taking place. You have cultural shifts essentially means that not just changes in the workspace, but also changes in the external environment that are happening. And you have technological adoption. So there are new technology that are coming in. People are being given more access to newer technology for getting their job done better. Now, we spoke about the aging people that are working already in the organization, and they might not be able to adapt to this new technology as well as the newer generation might be able to adapt. And they eventually might not able to use that software or that new change in technology that well or make proper use of it. For example, we can talk about Excel, okay? Someone who might know Excel so well, they might know all of the shortcuts and work really quick and get all of the data done really quick. But someone who might not be familiar with Excel might actually struggle. They might use, they might not know that you can drag down and put the same formula everywhere. They might use a slower technique to work that specific data chart. So that's how it's important that everyone can adapt technology that well. So concluding again, you have effective management of human resources in the context of these external and internal developments. And you obviously require a strategic approach wherein it has to be flexible, it has to be responsive, and obviously has to align with the external and the internal organization's dynamics. And as HR managers, they should be really good at balancing all of the needs and expectations of the organization. So if you're being put up as a HR manager, that's a very important place, because you need to take everything into place and not just a specific thing. You have employees and you have external stakeholders. You need to ensure legal compliance, and you also need to ensure that you're having a productive and positive work environment. So there's a lot of factors that you need to keep in mind while being put as an HR manager. Now we're going to talk about how to critically evaluate the extent that an organization's HR strategy and practices are influenced by external developments. This again comes back to the thing that we spoke about up there, technological advancements. Again, we spoke about AI, we spoke about new digital platforms that have come up, spoke about automation tools, basically automation tools, how they help in recruitment. You can put in a specific word and the CV comes up. Again, talking about economic conditions, you have downfalls, you have booms that affects those are external factors that affect HR as well. We spoke about legal and regulatory changes, all of the changes that are coming up in terms of employment laws. You have labor rights. We spoke about GDPR and data protection regulations. Coming to demographic and social changes. So you have such an aging workforce and increased diversity. We spoke about that as well. There are people retiring. There are people newly coming in. There's a lot of changes that are going on that affects human resources or strategic human resource plans. And it depends on an organization how they respond to it. So we can call this as external pressure as well, wherein how they respond to that specific external pressure, well, it essentially means that there are so many factors that come up. You have the market position, you have corporate culture, organizational size that affects these external or basically these external influences affect the organization. And you also have a proactive and strategic HR management that can not only respond to these external changes, but anticipate and prepare for them. That's wherein we spoke about the contingency theories that come up, or the contingency plans, wherein you're not just anticipating and thinking of them in advance, but you're also making sure that you have specific things in place wherein if it comes to you directly. So how the specific person or the specific organization responds and manages the situation on the spot, that's really important as well. And in conclusion, again, you have so many external developments that are taking place. And throughout this entire thing, it depends on how the organization adapts and proactively responds to them. And you have a strategic HR management organization that aligns with these HR practices and the external changes. And you're also having, you know, different organization objectives and values. You need to keep that in place if that's aligning with your goals eventually or not. Again, talking about, we're going to draw conclusions to make recommendations from adapting HR strategy and practices for the successful achievement of HR strategy. Pretty similar to what we spoke about before, how you are embracing the technological advancements. So it's not just technological advancements taking place, but also how you're investing in them and how you're making changes to your organization taking place, looking at all of the technological advancements around. So if you're investing in proper softwares or new technology or not, which basically helps your associates. And if you're encouraging your associates to adapt and learn these new technologies and upskill themselves or not as well. And then how you're using data to make informed decisions and predict the future trends. Because looking at data is a skill. Having proper HR analysts or data analysts around in the organization is really important, because just data can help you predict so much in the future that can help your organization in the long run. And then developing flexible working strategies. So how as an organization you are taking flexible working strategy well and how you are implementing it. So basically eventually meaning giving your staff flexible staffing models and cross-functional training, making sure that your staff is working from home, from the comfort of their home, but also making sure that they're being productive and doing the job. And you basically have a culture of all of the associates coming together and working together as a proper workforce. You develop different strategies that focus on employee engagement, because if someone is a remote worker, say, doesn't have to come to the office ever, that person is going to probably be disengaged from the organization. So how you focus on employee engagement and career progression is also really important, because someone sitting from the comfort of their home has to be equally engaged or equally passionate about the organization. So you need to make sure that employee engagement is properly put in place for that. And then again, you're talking about legal and regulatory changes, wherein how you need to develop your strategies that can stick to the legal and regulatory risks that have come up, how your organization is keeping GDPR rules in place, how your organization is providing proper training to the associates so that they are aware of the legal obligations that they have. For example, if someone is working in a fintech company, financial technology, I feel that specific sector is so vulnerable when it comes to hackers trying to hack the system, people trying to extract information, or people trying to extract bank details of the customers. So for example, Lloyd's Bank or HBSC, any bank that you take in, HSBC, sorry, those employees are properly trained, wherein they are given specific guidelines that they have to follow and protocols. Then talking about the demographic and social changes, you have to create an inclusive HR space. So the policies that you're putting out have to be very inclusive. They need to take everyone into consideration. They need to take someone who is 65 years old and working in the organization and someone who's 25 and working, and need to take both those associates into consideration while you're planning your policies. And you foster a workplace culture that values the diversity and promotes equal opportunities. Nowadays, especially, we are so big on equal opportunities, wherein women should equally be given proper pay and proper opportunities in an organization compared to men, because we're doing the same job role. So why aren't women being equally paid? You also engage in a lot of CSR, corporate social responsibility initiatives as well. as we spoke about, if you're passionate about the environment, you want to do a cleanup drive, that is where CSR can help you and plan that out. If you're passionate about, children, you can actually, companies are donating to these children charities. Passionate about animals, you give to a specific organization that helps animals in needs. So that's how CSR comes into place. Then enhancing employee experience and well-being. So you're focusing on employee well-being programs, and you're also focusing on their mental health support and giving them proper work-life balance. I read somewhere that organizations have these new apps basically to help associates suffering from mental health issues. So if you're looking at talking to a therapist, that is literally through just one click on the app. And I felt that was such a good idea that companies are investing in that, because they had a set of therapists that were hired by the company itself, and they launched this new app wherein they said, all right, if you need help or support with anything, book an appointment through the app and be there. And that's so important, because as an associate working in the organization, you feel that you're taken care of, and you obviously are more loyal to your organization then. And then you develop strong internal communication channels to maintain employee engagement and morale. So it's not just about associates doing their work and going home. It's associates doing their work and having a healthy work environment as well, wherein they're talking to other associates in the business, they're engaging with them. And once you do that, you have a community of people working together. And I feel that is going to help way more in the organization's long run. And you have a positive organization culture that supports employee development and recognizes achievements. So you need to keep in check that you are continuously helping your employees and helping their development, helping them grow, and helping to upskilling your associates. So just going to conclude this lecture here. How successful HR strategies, especially in a dynamic environment and organization, has to be proactive and adaptable. So we spoke about how a specific policy needs to work with someone who is 65 years old and someone who's 25 years old as well. And how that specific strategy is flexible and also technology driven and is legally compliant, is socially responsible, and is economic centric. So as we spoke about the compensation plan for the cafe that I was talking about, so how that plan would help associates, how that plan would help the cafe as a whole, and how that plan in the long run would help its employees to be loyal to the business. Also, while implementing these recommendations, organizations create a resilient HR strategy that supports the business goals and enhances employee engagement. So in the long-term success of an organization, that's really important, because things are constantly changing. There are so many external factors we spoke about that are constantly changing. So when you're putting a strategy in place, you need to keep check that that strategy is going to help throughout and in the long term adapt with the changes in the environment as well. Does anyone have any questions?
No, not from my side.
All right,
No.
then. Thank you so much for attending today's lecture. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for attending today's lecture, guys. I hope it was informative and it just helped you get a better perspective on what strategic human resource management is. We're going to take the other learning outcomes tomorrow and in the next week as well. So I'll see you guys tomorrow then.
Okay, thank you.
So much. Have a nice day. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.